Hi, fam. So as I'm working on my thesis about emotional health in discipleship, I want to work toward creating church cultures where emotions are talked about as part of our spiritual growth process. There are beginning to be more authors and pastors talking about these issues. Like I've mentioned, The Wisdom of Your Heart is such an excellent resource. Also, Emotionally Healthy Spirituality by Pete Scazzero is a great resource as well. So we want to not ignore emotional health as part of our discipleship process. I've been doing a meta-analysis of discipleship curriculum for the past 50 years and noticing there's really a lack of teaching about emotion in most discipleship curriculums. This is something that I want to change and what a lot of my thesis is focused on. And Mark Alan Chelsky has some important points to make about that. I want to read you a few quotes from his book about discipleship and emotional health. He said, "I had been told emotions were suspicious. I had been told emotions would cloud my judgment, leading me into sin. I had been told to avoid emotional people since they weren't dependable, but I had never been told what my emotions meant. I imagine sitting down with my daughter or son and having that kind of conversation. Hey, what you're feeling right now, that's sadness. It means you're experiencing a loss, that's all. It's not something to be afraid of, it's a feeling, and feelings are the way your brain and body tell you something about an experience you've had. Listen to it, see what you can learn." He writes later, "In our amazing bodies, God created an organic system that gives us the same kinds of experiences God has, but on a scale appropriate to humanity. God has emotions, we have emotions. You have emotions because God made you that way. God made you that way because emotions are also part of God's experience. Emotions are an integral part of who you were made to be. We won't grow out of our emotions. Maturity doesn't mean having no strong emotions. We'll grow out of the immature understanding and expression of our emotions. As we mature, our hearts will begin to beat with passion as God's heart does." He quotes Pete Scazzero, "To feel is to be human. To minimize or deny what we feel is a distortion of what it means to be image bearers of our personal God. To the degree that we are unable to express our emotions, we remain impaired in our ability to love God, others, and ourselves well." Chelsky writes, "You can't have intimacy if you can't feel. Without intimacy, your relationships stay shallow and transactional." We don't want to have shallow relationships with our neighbors or with God. So we need to give emotion the right place in our lives. We feel as God feels. And the more we're transformed by the renewing of our minds, by the renewing of our whole being, by the Holy Spirit, the more our emotions will reflect God's emotions. And instead of having emotions that come from selfishness, or instead of acting out of our emotions in a way that would hurt other people, we experience emotion authentically and we choose to obey God and love our neighbors out of our emotion, not in a dead, cold, stoic, placid way, but in a passionate way as God created us to be. So as you're processing your emotions, as you are seeking to grow more like Jesus in your emotional expressions, I hope and pray that you will learn to become emotionally mature, to feel the feelings that God's given you, to process them well, to love God and to love your neighbor emotionally.